She wasn't allowed secrets. She lived like property in a glass cage, always watched, never private. But here's the real question. Why was privacy so dangerous for ancient women? Because privacy was not just space. Privacy was power. And power, for many ancient women, was something society refused to allow. Why? Because a private woman could think freely. A private woman could speak freely. A private woman could become harder to control. That is what frightened these societies the most. Think about it. Why would simply being alone feel like a threat? Because when no one is watching, a person starts becoming themselves. And when a woman starts becoming herself, she stops being easy to manage. That's why ancient women were often kept under constant observation. Their movements mattered. Their words mattered. Their behavior mattered. Even their silence was judged. But what does that kind of life do to the human mind? Imagine waking up every day knowing someone is watching what you wear, watching how you walk, watching how you speak, watching who you talk to. Would you still feel free? Or would you start living like every move could be punished? That is where the fear begins. Not outside the body, inside the mind. Because over time, surveillance teaches people to monitor themselves. They don't need to be stopped every second. They start stopping themselves. And that is the most powerful kind of control. A woman like that doesn't just lose privacy. She loses spontaneity. She loses confidence. She loses the right to be imperfect without fear. And here's the shocking part. This kind of control doesn't always look violent. Sometimes it looks normal. Sometimes it looks like tradition. Sometimes it looks like honor. Sometimes it looks like protection. But underneath all of that, what is really happening? A human being is being trained to disappear, to shrink, to stay quiet, to avoid attention, to survive by becoming smaller. Now ask yourself this. If a woman is never allowed to exist without being watched, how can she ever develop a full sense of self? How can she trust her own thoughts? How can she make choices? How can she feel safe in her own mind? She can't. That's the tragedy. Ancient women were not only denied privacy in their homes, they were denied privacy in their identities. Everything about them was shaped for the gaze of others, and that gaze changed them. It made fear feel normal. It made silence feel safer than speech. It made obedience feel like survival. But maybe the darkest question is this. Was the goal just control? Or was it to make women so used to being watched that they stopped imagining freedom at all? Because once you can control what someone fears, you can control what they become. And that is why this is so disturbing. Not because ancient women had less comfort. Not because they lacked modern luxury. But because they were forced to live in a world where privacy itself was treated like a privilege they did not deserve. No secrets, no escape, no invisible self. Just a life lived under eyes that never blinked.